I mean, Dana, look, he'll go to his buddy, President Trump, and have him push these changes to the Ali Act through. So much for the American way and the First Amendment. I guess it doesn't apply here. This is a huge red flag for fighters and managers because the writing is on the wall. So Dana, you don't know shit about boxing. You don't give a shit about our history. You give less of a shit about the fighters. Your tiny t-shirt looks like shit, and everyone thinks you're a piece of shit. So Dana, fuck you.
Who cares about the TKO belt? That's why I've never created a Matchroom belt. Who cares about a Matchroom belt? I care about the WBC belt and the WBA and the IBF and the WBA. That's legacy, the Ring magazine. That's what every young fighter should want to try to win. Sometimes with new promoters that come in,
I don't think people are talking about this enough. The fact that it's not a real fight, it's an exhibition. And people always talk about Jake setting up his fights. I personally don't think Jake sets up his fights. I think, they're sanctioned fights, and, you're risking a federal crime if you set up a sanctioned fight.
There isn't a single day when boxing drama doesn't hit the headlines, and so today, it's a full-on war of words, one that stretches from Dana White's office all the way to Donald Trump's door. To everyone's surprise, Oscar De La Hoya has unleashed a brutal rant, and his target is none other than Dana White and his new empire, TKO. De La Hoya accused Dana White of pushing for changes to the Muhammad Ali Act, a law designed to protect fighters from exploitation. In his eyes, that move isn't just wrong, it's pure nonsense. According to Oscar, Dana White's entire approach is a slap in the face to what boxing stands for. He labeled White a scumbag, even dragging the entire TKO organization into the mud with him.
I mean, no other promoter has tried to change this act because there's no reason to. We believe in fair business. But you have these TKO scumbags who need it to change. I mean, look at their plans. Dana said openly that they will be honoring one belt, their own belt. They want to eliminate all other belts, the rich boxing history that comes along with the entire sport.
De La Hoya claims Dana's plan to adjust boxing rules, shrink ring sizes, and rewrite the Ali Act is a dangerous game. He believes it's all a power move to control fighters, stripping them off of fair play and independence. Something he says already happens in the UFC. In his words, Dana White wants to build a cage around boxing, turning athletes into workers under a promoter's dictatorship.
They want to change the size and shape of the ring with their own rules. What the f is next? Tigers and lions chained to the canvas?
And if that wasn't enough, Oscar says even Donald Trump has been pulled into this circus, allegedly urged by Dana White to help make these changes possible. For De La Hoya, that was the final straw. He warned that boxing could lose its essence if business leaders like White are allowed to rewrite the rules for profit.
I mean, Dana, look, he'll go to his buddy, President Trump, and have him push these changes to the Ali Act through. So much for the American way and the First Amendment. I guess it doesn't apply here. This is a huge red flag for fighters and managers because the writing is on the wall. TKO is actively changing legislation so they can openly fighters over. Fighters will be stuck in a dictatorship with no voices or rights as TKO takes all your money, just like the UFC has done. So Dana, you don't know shit about boxing. You don't give a shit about our history. You give less of a shit about the fighters. Your tiny t-shirt looks like shit.
But Oscar isn't alone in his outrage. Eddie Hearn, Matchroom Boxing's outspoken chairman, also stepped up with his own sharp words about White's growing influence. Hearn made it clear he wants nothing to do with that model. In his eyes, Zuffa boxing is just another version of the UFC, where promoters get rich while fighters get crumbs.
who cares about the TKO belt? That's why I've never created a Matchroom belt. Who cares about a Matchroom belt? I care about the WBC belt and the WBA and the IBF and the WBA. That's legacy, the Ring magazine. That's what every young fighter should want to try to win. Sometimes with new promoters that come in, they have new ideas about things they like and don't like about boxing. And one of those things, historically, with not just whether it's Dana or is, there's too many people in the ring. Who are all these people in the ring? The reality is the governing bodies are extremely important to boxing. Extremely important. And look, me and Maurizio have had our backwards and forwards. But what I will tell you, and he remains a good friend of mine, what I will tell you is the WBC are steeped in history when it comes to boxing. The WBC have been instrumental to the rise of the sport.
He reminded everyone that in real boxing, the majority of money goes to the men and women in the ring, not to those sitting behind the desks. We are real boxing, he emphasized, though not as a quote. The sentiment was clear. He said he has zero interest in changing the Muhammad Ali Act or the dimensions of the ring. For him, transparency is the key. Fighters like Enes deserve to know what the show makes, and they deserve to earn big because they're the ones putting their lives on the line.
In boxing, the majority of the revenue from the show goes to the fighter. In MMA, the majority of the revenue from the show goes to the promoter. Good luck to him. I wouldn't moan, but that's not how we work in boxing. And I'm not interested in a fake belt. I'm not interested in changing the Muhammad Ali Act. I'm not interested in changing the shape of the ring or the rules. What I'm interested in is the greatness of the sport of boxing.
Hearn tore into Zuffa Boxing's rumored idea of introducing their own championship belts, calling them nothing more than fake titles. He said boxing doesn't need more belts, more gimmicks, or more control from promoters. What it needs is fairness. And Dana White's system, he argued, is built to do the opposite.
And what you're looking at here is the greatness of the sport of boxing. I want to see fighters like Boots, who I believe can go down as generational greats, like Hagler, like Hearns, like Whittaker, like all these great fighters. He is of the same ability. And our belts matter. I'll ask you the question, right? Belts matter to you?
Yeah, for sure.
This belt, this is an interim world title.
In traditional boxing, the fighters walk away with most of the event's revenue. In MMA, it's the other way around. Promoters pocket the biggest slice, and for Hearn, that's not a model boxing should ever copy. He wished White good luck with his new venture, but made it clear Matchroom won't be part of it. Instead, he has his own plans.
The WBC do incredible work around the world. Sometimes I have a go at the organisations, but look at what they do for boxing. They should be in the ring. The belts should be in the ring. This is for the undisputed champion.
With De La Hoya and Hearn both coming after him, Dana White's TKO and Zuffa Boxing are under heavy fire. The combat sports landscape is splitting, one side fighting for tradition, the other for transformation. But fans are left wondering, is this the beginning of a new boxing era, or the end of what makes boxing pure?
Whenever I come over to the States, I kind of get the feeling that maybe the audience is disengaged a little bit with boxing over the last 10 to 20 years.
100%.
So,
and it's what everybody says, whether it's the Eddie Hearns or the, Shake Turkey or any of them. America's a different market. It's a tough market to figure out. You know what I mean? It is definitely fizzled out over here over the last several years. So, listen, right now, again, nobody has a television deal, right? The Zone's doing some fights, but I will have a television deal. I'll figure it out, and I will announce it ASAP, and I will start my thing in 2026, and boxing will be on television regularly now in the United States.
While promoters and executives throw verbal punches, another controversy has stolen the spotlight. Jake Paul versus Gervonta Tank Davis, a matchup that's already dividing fans, fighters, and legends of the game.
Jake Paul, I think when he weighed in for Mike Tyson, was 227 pounds. That is, if I'm not mistaken, a 92 pound weight difference, almost a 100 pound weight difference. It's insane. That is called one thing. That's called being a bully.
In a recent sit-down, former world champion Froch didn't hold back his disgust when asked about the rumored fight. He exploded, calling the idea illegal and slammed the matchup as nothing more than a media stunt. Beside him, boxing analyst Paolo Malignaggi joined the conversation, and things got even more heated.
Jake doesn't set up his fights. I think what he does is he stacks the deck against his opponents in those fights. So I wouldn't call them staged, but they're deck stackers, so he has an advantage. In this situation, though, an exhibition can be staged. I'm not saying anything that's out of the question. You're allowed to stage an exhibition. It's WWE is essentially exhibitions. So this is not a sanctioned fight. This is different from all the ones he's done before.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, but he's been involved in a couple of fights. If I just take the Chavez Jr. fight.
Pauli broke down the fight in his usual raw fashion, saying it's just another setup, a marketing show disguised as real competition. In his view, Jake Paul has never taken on a fully legitimate boxing test. Every fight he's chosen has been strategically designed, sanctioned, and planned for his benefit. Pauli went as far as to call it a crime against boxing, saying the sport deserves better than circus-style matchups for views.
I don't think people are talking about this enough. The fact that it's not a real fight, it's an exhibition. And people always talk about Jake setting up his fights. I personally don't think Jake sets up his fights. I think, they're sanctioned fights, and, you're risking a federal crime if you set up a sanctioned fight. So I personally don't think, when I watch it, I just think he's fighting opponents that, are not with it anymore or are too small for him and whatnot. But in this situation, it is an exhibition. So you've got to keep in mind that this could be set up. This could be like WWE. This one could be set up. I don't know. I'm not saying it is, but...
When it came to predictions, Pauli was brutally honest. He said if the glove size debate is settled fairly and both fighters meet under standard conditions, then Tank Davis might have a real chance. But even then, the physical gap between the two could be the biggest factor. Jake Paul walks into this fight as the naturally bigger man with power that could make a difference against Tank's explosive speed.
If they don't stage it and don't kind of set up a sort of a mild sparring session, I'd say Davis has a chance. Depends on the size of the gloves. Because here's the thing, Jake is probably 100 pounds bigger than the guy. That's a lot of weight, Carl. You've been in a boxing ring, that still counts. And if you make the gloves small, Gervonta could technically hurt Jake even if he hits him. But the problem is the gloves are small. Jake could also hurt Gervonta because Gervonta's so small. Gervonta's so much smaller than him. So do you make the gloves big, and then really who's got an advantage? I don't know. Technically, Gervonta's a lot better boxer, but he's so much smaller. I've stood next to Jake. Jake's a big guy. It's like I said, it's a bit of a circus freak show.
And that's where his frustration boils over. For him, it's not about whether Jack can punch or not, it's about the disrespect this kind of fight brings to boxing's history. And he's not alone. Many believes the sport is being turned into entertainment, where money matters more than merit.
He went and took a circus show fight, and he said he was going to retire. I believe him.
Why do you say he's a circus show fight?
It's just for giggles. Jake Paul's 200 pounds, and he's whatever he is. So.
Spoke to Roberto Diaz over in Florida, and I know he's part of your team. He was a little bit upset when all that news came out. He called it a duck. Would you call it a duck?
For sure. You can call it a spade, for sure. We're contracted to fight, and you go and take another fight. You breach that contract. You go take another fight. That's a clear duck.
Still, the hype is real. The fight, if it happens, will sell, and that's what keeps it alive. Social media is split right down the middle. Some fans want to see Jake get humbled by Tank's skill. Others believe Jake's size and training could shock the world. Adding fuel to the fire, rising star Raymond Ford has reportedly joined Jake Paul's camp. Sources say Ford has been working closely with Jake to sharpen his timing, defense, and finishing power, all focused on one mission: knocking out Tank Davis. It's a move that has caught the attention of both critics and supporters. Raymond Ford's involvement brings a new level of legitimacy to Jake's preparation. He's a fighter known for his speed and precision, and training alongside him could give Jake a serious edge. But for Tank Davis, that just raises the stakes, because no one in boxing wants to be the guy who loses to a YouTuber. The conversation around Jake versus Tank goes deeper than just the matchup. It's about what kind of fights the boxing world is now accepting. Crossover bouts that blend spectacle with sport. Some say it's good for business, bringing new fans to the table. Others, like Froch and Malinaji, see it as the slow decay of boxing's real competition.
Gervonta Tank Davis. Now, Lamont Roach said that Tank is scared. I swear, if Pitbull was fighting Roach, if that Tank fight never happened, nobody would have their money on Roach. Gervonta, his fight against Jake Paul. I'm probably gonna catch shit about it. I don't give a damn. I'm gonna say this clean. That fight, everybody who's saying that is just going to be an exhibition, like it's just going to be a fake fight. The only thing that y'all will call real is the Tank.
From Dana White's corporate plans to Jake Paul's controversial rise, the fight game has never looked more divided. On one end, promoters are fighting over control. On the other, fighters are clashing over credibility. And in between, the fans are left wondering what's real and what's just for show.
You got a mohawk, bro. Remember that. You got a mohawk.
You tattooed your name on your forehead so you wouldn't forget, you dumbass.
That's not my name, dumbass. That's my daughter's name, dumbass. My son's name, dumbass. Hey, again, you got a mohawk.
Everyone's talking, everyone's arguing, but one truth remains. Boxing has always been built on risk, pride, and legacy. And whether it's in the boardroom or the ring, those who forget that always get knocked out in the end. So what do you think? Is Dana White changing the game for better or worse? And can Jake Paul really survive Tank Davis's power inside a real boxing ring? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because this fight isn't just between the fighters, it's between two worlds colliding. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Ring Rivalry, where every round sparks new rivalries and the drama never ends.